Okay, hi everybody. Good evening. My name is Shane D. Krause, and I'm the Director of Director for CORE Community Development. So CORE supports women who are strengthening Klal Yisrael. It fosters warm and inspiring communities comprised of strong, healthy homes by guiding and supporting the women who are core of those homes. Additionally, it strengthens female leaders and teachers so they can strengthen and support the women in our communities. Tonight's presentation is the brainchild of Bela Feuerstein. I think I pronounced your name wrong. It's Feuerstein. Okay, got it. One of the core mentors. She observed that the women in our community, beyond hers and everybody else's, is struggling with a lot of anniversary trauma, as well as spiritual questions brought on by all that has happened over the past year. Thank you so much, Bela, for organizing tonight's program. The program has three parts. First, Sara Eiseman will address the idea of anniversary trauma and how to work with it. Then Aliza Bulow will talk about some of the spiritual questions. Finally, we will have some time for questions and answers, and please feel free to type your questions as we go along into the chat. I'll put them together for the end of the program, and we'll see how many we can get to, Be'ezras Hashem. Sara Eiseman is a certified clinical therapist from Oak Park, Michigan. Hi, Sara. Where she resides with her husband in her almost empty nest. She completed a master's in social work at Wayne State University, and then she went on to practice at Jewish Family Service of Detroit, and then on to private practice. Currently, Sara acts as a dating coach, the occasional lecturer, the Family First dating advice columnist, and a core mentor. She is dedicated to bringing self-awareness, authenticity, and depth to our relationships with ourselves, each other, and Hashem. Hi, Sara. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Shandy, and thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Core, for hosting. Thank you, Bela, for putting this together. We're going to just talk like friends tonight because we have been through a lot this year, and I think we owe that to ourselves and to each other. About 30 some years ago, when I did my internship in a Borman Hall, which was a nursing home in Detroit, when my supervisor taught me a few things. One of the things she taught me is that sometimes the one thing you learn in an internship is that you're never going to want to do this your whole life. And that was very true for me. But the other thing she taught me was about something called anniversary syndrome. And that was they noticed among the residents that around a certain time of year, people would start to get like depressed for unexplained reasons. And they noticed this as a pattern. And we realized over the last 30 years, there's been like an explosion of knowledge in a new field called neuroscience. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has like granted scientists and researchers the ability to understand the brain in a way that we never understood it before. And this knowledge helps us understand that what they were noticing then, what they called anniversary syndrome then, was really PTSD. That's what was going on. In 2014, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book, a groundbreaking book called The Body Keeps the Score. And in it, he explained this idea that it's sort of become so part of how we think about life now that we don't realize how revolutionary it was. And he basically helped us understand that if we don't process trauma, it gets stuck in our body. It stays in our body. He wrote, trauma is not the story of something that happened back then. It's the current imprint of that truth, of that pain, horror, and fear living inside of people. What that means is trauma isn't something that, oh, it happened to me then, and that's why I'm thinking about it, I'm upset. No, trauma is happening now as we speak. If we don't process it, it stays in our body. Now, in order to understand that, we're going to do a very itty bitty little piece of, biology now, a little very elementary understanding of the brain. Brain has many parts, but for our purposes today, we're going to talk about two of them. The first is the amygdala, which is what they call the most primitive part of the brain. That's the part of our brain that's in charge of housekeeping. That's the part of the brain that makes sure that our body is functioning and helps us live and survive. That's its job. Its job is to protect us. It's kind of like, in terms of sophistication, it's kind of like a 3-year-old on having had 3 dum-dums. It's very raw and primitive part of our brain. Then we have what's called the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of our brain that's like your proper aunt that sends thank you notes, It's the part that's about organizing and memory. And what we have to understand is that when trauma happens, there's none of this organizing nonsense. We go into like the amygdala sends out danger, danger, danger. And then it sends out the stress hormones. And the job of the stress hormones is to prepare the body to fight this danger. And there's no words, there's no time for words, there's no time for understanding. It's about survival, it's about reacting. And that's why very often when people speak about trauma, they just say, I have no words. I can't explain it, because it wasn't encoded in their brain in words. It was encoded in feeling. They can feel it. You give them something that smells like what happened on the day of the trauma, and they're right back there. But they can't tell it. It gets stored as a feeling, not as a story. Okay. So once we understood that piece of how the brain works, so much of our understanding really just exploded. Trauma comes from a sense of too much, too fast. When we can't make sense of what's happening, when we're overwhelmed and our ability to understand what's happening and to deal with what's happening is overwhelmed, that's what we call a sense of being in trauma. And what we have to understand is HaKadosh Baruch Hu did this really as, he set up the brain this way as a chesed. Imagine if there's, I don't know if you're scared of dogs, I know I am. Imagine there's a dog coming at you down the street, right? You're not sitting here thinking, let me go back to my class in biology and think about the different sorts of species of dog. Does this qualify as a dangerous dog? What are the behaviors of a dangerous dog? No, you're thinking, get me out of here, right? And you run. Your feet, your body is saying, run, girl, run. And if we were, and this is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us as a gift. If we were to start trying to organize everything and use all those prefrontal faculties, we'd probably end up dead more often than not. The body is wired to react and to protect us. Now, what we have to understand is that's a very normal and healthy response to an immediate danger that we can get away from. So if you take a run and you run into your car and that big bad dog can't get to you, after a while, your heart rate slows down again, you start breathing again, you feel your blood kind of, calming down again, and it's all good. That's how we were designed to be. That's how Kadosh Baruch Hu set us up. Okay. What happens with trauma is trauma is a sense of immobilization. If you're on that street and that dog is coming at you, but chas v'shalom, a person has a broken leg and they can't run, or if a child is, God forbid, in an abusive family and there's no place for them to go, that's when trauma sets in. Because what's happening is the body is flooded. Run, 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 do something, fight, flight, freeze, do something. But you can't. There's a sense of powerlessness. That immobilization, that's what traps the trauma. That's when it's all this stuff, like nowhere to go and all day to get there. It's just sitting there in the body. Okay. That's how the trauma begins to settle within us. And it's important for us to understand that it's less about the actual danger and more about the perception. You can have someone who's in a state of real danger, but if they feel like there's something they can do, like example, of someone who's hang gliding, right? They know they can pull that parachute. They don't feel traumatized. They have something that they can do. Even though they're really in danger, you're falling out of a plane, you're really in danger. Or somebody who is actually not in danger, but they feel powerless. Like that little dog might have been the sweetest little golden retriever named Goldie or something. I don't know. But if I feel afraid and I feel like there's nothing I can do about it, that sense of powerlessness is what traps the trauma in the body. And then what if the trauma never ends? What if it's every day the same thing is happening over and over and over again? When does the body ever get to relax? When does the brain ever get to settle down? When does the amygdala say, honey, it's okay? So another aspect of trauma is that if it's ongoing, it's very difficult for us to get back to our settled and comfortable state. It's kind of like when you're driving with your gas, constantly, your foot is constantly on the pedal, and the engine keeps getting flooded with more and more and more gas, but there's a wall in front of you. There's no way to go. So I want to take us back to last year this time and just talk about how all this fits into that, because it was so much. Very often when we're going through a personal crisis, so our life is in crisis, but the rest of the world feels like it's functioning okay. And if we need help, if God forbid something's going on in our family, we can call on our extended family, or we can call on friends, or we can call on our parents or on our children. Everyone. There was nowhere to go. There was nowhere to run. There was nobody to turn to. Everybody was in crisis. And it wasn't just crisis about one part of your life. It wasn't just about Parnassa. It wasn't just about health. It was about everything. And whatever was going on in your life at that time, chances are Corona made it worse. Like, there were very few things that Corona made better. Yeah, there was the occasional family, the occasional introvert who kind of liked it, maybe the first few weeks, whatever. But for the most part, people who were in violent situations at home, it was a nightmare being stuck in a house with an abusive person for days, weeks, months on end. People who had special needs children who maybe would go out for hours, at a time to respite or to school programs. Suddenly they were at home all day. And it was everything all at once. There was no part of our lives that wasn't affected by this. So when we think about it from a trauma model, it was so very much on so many levels. And each one of these things was like a threat to life and sanity. There was fear, physical fear, and there was also fear of like mentally imploding. It was just very, very much to deal with. It's kind of like, you should forgive my metaphor, but it's almost like a plumbing system. If you keep on putting tissues into it without ever flushing it, one day it's going to be one tissue too many, and the system just erupts. And that's kind of what's happening when the body is holding on to so much and it gets triggered. Sometimes we have just no clue. Like, what was it about this tissue that made the whole thing it was just an innocent little tissue. What happened there? Well, what happened there, let's first define a trigger. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot. A trigger is a psychological stimulus that prompts a recall of the event. Okay, something about this reminds you of the event. And remember, when we say reminds, we don't mean words. We mean there's a feeling, a smell, a sound that just kicks back into that amygdala, and the amygdala goes wild. Uh-oh, did you say Pesach? Did you say spring? Last time I heard spring, there was a whole lot of Corona attached to that, right? And it's an irrational reaction, but in your mind, the two things are very much connected. And now here we are. It's like, it's Purim, and who went to a Purim Suda this year and didn't talk about, oh, remember last year? Oh my gosh, it was the last vestige of normal. I remember last year with our Purim Suda, we were made fun of this one friend who they refused to come and they refused to hold people's hands. It's like, what are they hawking this Corona and China? I don't even know what they're talking about. Why, just get in the dance circle and dance, right? So, that's so you went to the Masiba this year and you couldn't help but think of it last year and how different things were last year. And all of a sudden you see an ad for potato starch at KRM and you start crying and you're like, why is the potato starch making me cry? Because potato starch reminds you about like the 12 cans that you had last year, because you had all these plans for having your kids and your parents and all the things you were going to make, and they're all still sitting in your closet because you barely got yourself out of bed enough to put, some soup up for Yontif. And it just, everything about now, the spring is coming, the circulars, you go through a magazine, you see ads for the hotels, and you suddenly find yourself getting emotional. And it's like, And it's not because you're not going to the hotel. That might be a reaction a few years ago, but it's because everything about Pesach triggers all these memories of what it was last year, and how much pain there was last year, and how much overwhelm there was last year, and how you were sick yourself, and trying to take care of your mother who was in a hospital, who you couldn't go visit, and you couldn't even send food to, all the while you're trying to somehow clean a house for Pesach and somehow keep your kids learning on Zoom. A lot. So we never know what it is that's going to trigger, but it helps to understand what that trigger is doing and what is coming. I know for myself, forever, Pesach will never be the same for us. My sister was nifter on the second night of Pesach, right before the Seder. We suddenly got a knock at our door, and it was my parents' next door neighbors. And they said, your parents said you should come over. You have something important to tell you. And I just freaked out. I mean, what it couldn't have been good news. And just that shock and that panic and the denials, like, of course they weren't going to tell me she was dead. They were probably going to say that she took, she had a downturn or something. And running to their house and standing at the edge of their door and not even being able to go in because we were afraid to touch them, and seeing my father sitting at the table and just crying, Ahuva, where are you? And then not even being able to go in and then hug them. It was crazy. It was so, every part of it was so crazy and sad. And there was nothing to do about it. You just had to be there, and the feelings were just flooding through, and you just put one foot in front of the other. But all the while, the body was keeping the score. The body was holding on, and the body does hold on. And I think what's important for us to understand is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up his world and set up his mitzvos in a way for us to function optimally. Mental health, when we follow the Torah as it's laid out, there's things built into the system. When a person is sick and we can go over and take them food and take care of them, that evokes a sense of empowerment. But people were so sick, and we couldn't do anything for them. And it's interesting because a lot of the people, they should be all gebench, the Hatzalah members, and then the Chaverim, and all these people who put together these Pesach programs, in a sense, they came out of this the most healthy, because there was something to do with all that energy. They didn't have that powerlessness, that sense of immobilization of what do I do? They were able to channel some of that trauma, take that engine on overdrive and use it and harness it to help people and to release some of that trauma from their bodies. I mean, Levias, they give us closure. They give us a place to put all that emotion, all that stress hormone. The Shivas, we process the trauma by telling the story and telling the story. None of that was available. None of that was available to us in the way that we're used to, and that we access. None of the normal options were available. So some of us just slipped into denial, because at the end of the day, Pesach got made, kids did or didn't learn, the sick got better, the dead got buried, and we pretended we were okay. We just put one foot in front of the other, and we did what we do. We put on our emunah, we waved our emunah banners, and we said, look at us, we're good. I remember my sister telling me one time when she used to teach special ed kids, and they had this one kid who used to walk back and forth when he got very agitated, and he would just put his hands over his ears and he would say, I'm okay. And sometimes I feel like that's what we look like as a nation. It's like we're so busy convincing ourselves that we're okay. And sometimes we are, and sometimes we're really not. And sometimes that trauma still stays in our body. And we don't realize that even though we may have been okay then, we're still holding on to it. And sometimes it doesn't come out till a year later, till a few years later, till we feel ready to process it, or till it becomes so overwhelming that it just starts bubbling up and we have no choice. I think the other thing that happened is there was no demarcation, especially in New York. Things kind of went from total crisis craziness to like, oh, wow. Oh, good. Look, Corona's over, and everybody just kind of moved on and, on with the show, let's keep on doing what we do best and let's keep, let's keep rolling. And I think that that's a real mistake, because as humans, we need people to bear witness to our pain. It's an innate and important human need. We need someone to understand what happened to us individually and what happened to us as a nation. Nobody said, oh my gosh, Klal Yisrael, are you okay? What happened to you? You've had such a rough year, Shevala. It's like none of that happened. We just moved on because there really is no end. It's not over, but we're acting like it's over and we feel like it's over and we want it to be over, but it's really not over. And how do we commemorate that? How do we honor that? There was, so for some people, they've made an effort, they've found ways to somehow make some sense of this. For other people, it's coming up now. It's really, the piper must be paid. Like for some people, it's creeping in, people are experiencing flashbacks, nightmares, dreams, irritability, just confused thinking, some depression, and not necessarily connecting it to the memories that are being stored in their body. And I think it's important to note also that everybody's going to experience this differently. There's what we call complex trauma. And if somebody's coming into this situation with a history of trauma already, if let's say somebody's dealing with sense of a trauma that they're bringing from their own backgrounds of feeling powerless, let's say as a child in an abuse situation, it's going to trigger all those feelings. So it's going to be trauma on top of trauma. So we need to pause and we need to step back and give ourselves space to heal. How do we heal from this monster? Well, first we say thank you to Bela for putting together our program tonight, because awareness is the first step. For us to even recognize that these weird feelings that we're having, that we're not getting emotional because potato starch went up $1. We're getting emotional because it brings back all those Pesach memories. So its first step is the awareness. The second step is what we call increasing the window of tolerance. When people have a trauma response, some people shut down in a depressed mode. Some people get into hyper arousal panic mode, and either one of those is not sustainable in the long term. We all do that sometimes, but this middle space in between, that's what we call the optimal window of tolerance. And that's what we want to do. We want to bring ourselves into that place where we have enough energy to deal and to heal, but not so much that we're basket cases. And for each person, that's gonna look very different. For some people, somatic work is very helpful. Releasing the trauma from the body through somatic healing is very helpful. For some people, it's mindfulness, learning to actually accept the pain, feel it, say, you know what, it's really painful, but I can handle it. I'm going to be okay. The main thing is to calm that amygdala down. Tell that amygdala, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. I'm okay. We're going to be okay. In whatever ways for, that works for each person. I think the main thing is to pay attention. It's like this muscle that I use all the time. Sometimes you can be on the phone making this super duper important call, and your little kid starts pulling on your skirt, mommy, 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 right? Mommy, 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 mommy. And you keep on trying to tell this kid to go away because you're on a really, really important, and it's really an important call. It's not. And then finally it occurs to you, you can't make this call because this child really needs attention. So you say to this very important person on the call, I'm so sorry, I'm going to need to call you back. And you turn around and you get on your knee and you look this child in the eye and you say, what do you need, Shefala? What do you need? And that's what's going on here. There's this persistent unease, this niggling discomfort in us, and attention must be paid. We have to ask this discomfort, what do you need from me? How can I help you? Sometimes it's just about breathing. It's about filling ourselves up with that sense of just a deep breath, letting all those systems calm back down. Sometimes, again, so we talked about the bearing witness for each other, for ourselves, acknowledging the enormity of what happened. Sometimes it's about processing the trauma and honoring the impact that it had on us. So last year, a lot of these tools were not available to us. And I'm so grateful that this year we're opening the conversation and we're able to look at, some of the ways that we can assign meaning to what happened. And with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to Aliza, who hopefully will give us some perspective on that.
Okay, thank you so much, Sara. That was absolutely beautiful. It was a delight listening to you. Actually, they didn't want you to finish. It's just a pleasure to my ears to hear you speak, and it was very informative. And I just daven that everybody takes what you say to heart and start working on their own journey, their own process, beginning with awareness. So thank you for that. And now we'll turn over to the spiritual side. And Aliza Bulow is going to speak for us. She is an author, educator, and mentor to Jewish women around the world. She has traveled extensively for the past 15 years, visiting Jewish communities on 5 different continents, teaching Torah and coaching rabbinic couples. She founded CORE 3 years ago in response to the needs she saw during those travels. Since then, she has created a 2-year training program for spiritual mentors, multiple peer communities, and professional development programs for female leaders and teachers within the Jewish community, and a community development program, a long ongoing sentence, that engages lay leaders as they build core circles, customized micro communities. Hi, Aliza. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, Shandy, for being our director of the community development branch. I so appreciate that. So wonderful to work with you.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a lot of questions beforehand, and I want to share, I'll share some of the questions that I want to address. Of course, we can't address anything fully, but we can just brush over some things. So I want to share, there's 5 questions I'm going to touch on tonight. And here they are. I'll tell you how I'm going to deal with them. Where is Mashiach? We thought he was going to be here by now. What's going on with that? Why did Hashem do this to us? What's with Corona? Why did he change the whole world? Would my loved ones still be alive if I would have rushed them to the hospital faster, if I would have brought them soup sooner, if I would have picked up the phone and called sooner, if I would have been in the hospital to watch over them, if I Is it possible for someone to die before their time? Like, did that happen to the person that I lost? Did they die before their time? And the 5th question for tonight is, how is it that we were so bonded and connected during the horror of the pandemic last year, but as time passed, there was a shift, and now it seems like there's more machlokas than before? I'm going to give you a roadmap for thinking about those questions. A few answers, but I'd like to broaden the questions a little bit, give you a roadmap, and then I'm going to give you some practical tools. So obviously there's a lot of questions here and not that much time. It's just a roadmap. This is not an in-depth treatment of any piece of Jewish philosophy. Nevertheless, I will share some pieces with you. Where is Mashiach? We all expected he was going to be here by now. We were positive. Corona, it's the crown. And Hashem is sending his crown to the planet. And we're going to see Mashiach for sure. Pesach is going to be it. We're so excited, right? This is it. The whole world has paused and we're ready for the revelation. Like never before has the entire world paused. Everyone at the same time. waiting. We've had countries before that have been through stuff, but never the whole world at the same time, and we all knew about it. It's pretty amazing, right? You could even feel like when the pasuk talks about Umalachal haaretz de'ah, the entire earth was filled with the knowledge. Well, this kind of felt like it, didn't it? Everybody knew about Corona. Everybody knew about a crown. Now we just had to put it in the right place, right? Right on top of Hashem's, whatever you want to call it, on top of Hashem, right? But it should go there, and we should all see Mashiach coming soon, right? Where is he? So there's so much to learn about Mashiach. And we are going to make, I think, a list of sources to share afterwards. But anybody who wants to do a quick read, and the quickest but most important read about Mashiach, needs to look at the Rambam, Hilchot Melachim, and Milchamot, the end of the entire Mishnah Torah. The last 2 chapters deal with Mashiach, and just straight up reading right there. And they're actually unusual chapters of the Rambam. But you can find them there, and it's unusual because he actually quotes a lot of proof texts, and the Rambam didn't do that in the Mishnah Torah. It's not a proof text rich kind of writer in this context. He wrote, and he was very clear, and he didn't necessarily quote sources in most of the places, but here he does. But he's very clear that he discusses Mashiach coming and what it's going to be like, and what the changes will be like, and what the changes won't be like. And for whoever wants to see more there, should definitely look there. There's fascinating information there. But what I want to point out is something that everybody has read, everybody in this group has read, and that's the 15th bracha of the Shemona Esrei. Et tzemach David avdecha mehera tatzmiach, right? The shoot or the blossom of David, your servant, quickly it should blossom. We say that every day, or somebody does say it every day, right? Whoever davens says that every day. I don't want to make any assumptions, but it is said by the Jewish people every day. So it's a question, what does that mean, tzemach David? In Zechariah, there's a pasuk in Zechariah that says tzemach David is actually a person. Tzemach David is a person, and that person is going to be the one that brings, let's see where the pasuk says, V'amarta alav lemor ko amar Hashem tzvaot lemor hine ish tzemach shmo. His name is Tzemach, and he's going to cause the things to blossom and rebuild the Mishkan. Or it means blossom. Either Tzemach is a person or Tzemach is a process. So the process, Matzmiach Karen Yeshua, that our Yeshua, the ultimate redemption will blossom. You can watch it right now blossoming and unfolding. Blossoming means it takes time. It's not going to be instant. So, but it will happen. It just takes time. So think about a plant blossoming. We see it growing, but not in front of our eyes. We see it growing when we leave and come back a day later, a week later, a month later. You can see real distance and real growth, but not while you're sitting staring at it. So, and it's not going to be an instant thing that we see, this revelation of Mashiach, but you could see it right now blossoming. Right now, some of the things that are supposed to happen are happening, that the prophecies talk about, the ingathering of the exiles, or the healing of the sick. Look at what's happening in our hospitals, or the lifting of the different difficulties, whether it's bearing children in pain or gaining an income through difficult work. All of that is changing. I mean, I remember Tehila Yeager telling me that she told her children, when Mashiach comes, there's going to be cinnamon rolls on bushes. You're going to be able to just pick them. And I think about that, bushes, or what about supermarket shelves? You just pick them. Like, we don't have to go to the field and harvest the wheat, plant the wheat, and hoe the wheat, and harvest the wheat, and winnow the wheat, and grind the wheat, and make the cinnamon rolls. You could just pluck them right there. They're ready for you. It's so, I mean, everything's so available today. And think about how easy it is for us to work, even those of us with parnasa troubles. But most of us are not working hard labor. We push buttons and we move pencils and we do things that create it. We're in a knowledge age where things are shifted by thought and by exchanging words. It's a very different reality. This is also the blossoming. Even what's going on in the land of Israel, the re-keeping of mitzvot that were lost and the blossoming there. You can see things blossoming and blossoming and blossoming, even peace in the world. Whether you see it in the Abraham Accords or whether you actually see that people are getting together, even through Corona, where nations are working together, shifting their budgets. Think about this. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and they shall not learn war anymore, as it says in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah. What does that mean? That means people shift their budgets from war budgets to peace budgets that feed people and heal people, like when people work together on a shot to create vaccines, to heal the planet, and countries come together to do that. How amazing is that? That prophecies are being revealed and things are blossoming before us. So are we ready for Mashiach to come? For sure, everybody wants Mashiach to come. But we often want Mashiach sometimes for the wrong reasons. We just want to see our relatives that passed on, or we want to see the end of the tsaros that we have in the world. Really why we want Mashiach is because we want this grand project of all of humanity to come to fruition, that everyone should know Hashem and everyone should work together to reveal that Gilu Yehudo, that Hashem's oneness should be revealed in the whole world, and we should all live that and hold that together. That's really what we're hoping for. So let's go to, why did Hashem do this then? What's up with that? What is it about a magefa? So I heard Rabbi Reuven Leichter speak at the beginning of this whole thing, and he was very clear. I looked up a few of the sources that he mentioned, but didn't find the one particularly, but he was very clear that a magefa eno mavchin ben tov l'ra. A plague does not choose between good and bad. What does that mean? That means that people are going to die outside of what you might expect, right? This one's young and healthy. This one's a tzaddik. This one leads a community. This one never did anything bad to anyone. And yet they're caught up in the sweep of history. And the Magefa is not mavchin ben tov l'ra. It's not about your merits or demerits. You can't even do a segula to save somebody. Even davening. Like, it doesn't necessarily, he taught that it doesn't actually matter that there aren't zechuyos that can save you in the midst of last year's misery. That level of heaviness is something that's in a way lamala min hateva. It just brushes through like a tornado, where you can't really tell where it's going to stop and what it's going to do and the destruction that it's going to cause. And it's not actually about the individuals, it's about the klal at that time. So for this, it's important to understand that there are two kinds of hashgacha. We talk about hashgacha pratis all the time. It's very in fashion today. And I'm saying it's very in fashion today because the truth is that there's different fashions for philosophy in the Jewish people. And we go through different periods of believing different things. Right now, hashgacha pratis, down to the very last detail, is very much what we collectively hold. Nevertheless, the Ramchal discusses that there's also something called hashgacha klalis, a general hashgacha for the general population, and that we function inside that general hashgacha. So we are part of a sweeping forward motion of history. We can make choices inside of that, but there's a hashgacha klalis that has to do with the sweeping motion of history, and that also devolves on things rather than on people. People in general have a hashgacha pratis inside the hashgacha klalis, but let's just say, let's talk about Sara Eiseman's lovely golden retriever named Goldie, or any other dog named that, right? Dogs are subject to hashgacha klalis. That golden retriever doesn't have its own hashgacha. It's part of the group of golden retrievers, should they exist on the planet or not. There's not individual hashgacha for a particular dog. There's a general hashgacha for the entire section of dogs on the planet, unless that dog is related to a human being. In which case, if it's a pet, it enters into the hashgacha pratis of that individual human being. So now we have an interplay between hashgacha klalis and hashgacha pratis, and how does that work? And it's very confusing. And we're going to let it stay very confusing for now because we can't go into everything. But it's important to understand that there's a lot of streams of hashgacha going on. So why would Hashem do something like this? Really to shift the planet, because that's what needs to happen. It's part of the entire unfolding of whatever needs to unfold. Is Mashiach around the corner? We sure hope so. Do we know it for sure? We do not. Do some people have their tambourines ready? They do. Are other people holding back saying, I'm just going to wait and watch? Yes, they are. Nevertheless, clearly something is happening and Hashem's in charge of what's happening. And it's okay to let him be in charge of what's happening and watch things unfold. But definitely the planet has been shooken up. A personal tefillah that I have is, we do understand that before Mashiach comes, there's going to be some kind of big war, Gog, Magog, whatever that's going to be like. Did it happen already? Was that the Shoah? Was that World War II? Or is this it? Is this the softest, nicest way to change the entire planet when it needs to be changed? Maybe that's this. It's possible. We know that one reason that we sit in the sukkah after Yom Kippur is in case we were judged to need exile as our punishment, we're going to the sukkah. It's the softest, nicest type of exile that we could have outside of our homes in the lovely walls of Hashem's embrace in the sukkah. So who knows what's what? But that there are different types of hashgacha, there are. So can I answer the question, why did this happen? No. But does Hashem know the answer? He for sure does. And can we trust him to know more than us? We for sure can. So we're going to leave that there. Now the question is, would my loved one still have died if I want to put that together with, that's kind of the Magefa questions, and there was no choice to build zchuyos there. But let's put it together with, can someone die before their time? And really I want to ask, can someone die at all, actually? Do we die? What is that? What is the concept of death? Who are we really? Really, we are physical beings that have a soul, or are we really? Really, are we spiritual beings having a physical experience? And that's how I see us. That's how our sages see us. We're souls before we're born. And we're going to be souls after we die, after we shed this body and go into the next word, transition. After we transition from the world of souls into this world, and we transition out of this world. And we wear a physical body for however long we get to wear it. A day, a week, a year, a decade, lots of decades, 120 years. But in the end, everybody, except Eliyahu, everybody dies. Everybody dies. There is nobody who's born who's not going to die. So everybody dies at some point. So then you could say, what's the point? You just come to live, to have pleasure, to have tears, and then die? What is that about? But it's not. It's something so much bigger than that. As spiritual selves, we come into this world and wear a body and function inside this physical world so that we can grow our souls, so that we can have a physical domain to function with and a physical tool to function through to create spiritual shifts. And that's why we have mitzvahs. If you think about mitzvahs all together, and just a definition that works in with this is, a mitzvah is a physical pathway to a spiritual destination. That's really what it is. Something that we do to create a spiritual result. Something that we use our bodies for to grow our souls through. That's what a mitzvah is. And this whole world is just about behaving in physical ways that create spiritual transformations for our souls. That's what we're here for. But in the end, our soul is still alive. So when we shed our body, we're still alive. So the first question is, can you die before your time? It's not possible. Because there is a time for everybody, and it can't be cut short. Our souls live forever. It's possible. There are few people that can be so evil that they can put into action a chain of reactions that will cause their soul ultimately to destruct. Hitler among them, Yimach Shemo. But you don't get to fade to black. You know, these people who like shoot up a movie theater and then kill themselves because they think they won't have to face that. Oh, they face it. They face it after there's no escape. It's not possible to escape. Impossible to escape. So it's definitely created. There's justice in the ultimate scheme of things, and Hashem makes sure that everyone pays and everyone receives good for what they did, and there's a price to pay for negativity. Anyway, it is not possible actually for somebody to die before their time, because there is that hashgacha pratis inside the hashgacha klalis where it is the right time, even if it's a painful time, but it is a right time. And whatever a person needed to accomplish, a person accomplished. And if they don't, there's also, also fashionable today, not everybody agrees, but we also do in general believe in reincarnation, that there is such a concept of gilgul nefashot, and that they can come back in different places in different ways for different purposes, for different threads of existence. And sometimes that is that 1 day existence, or that 1 week, or that 1 year existence is there just for a tikkun from a different life. It's not that that life was cut short, that is finishing another time. So it's important to understand that there's all kinds of cheshbonot that we can't know what they are, but Hashem does. So, okay, let's now just move for a second to how is it that we were so bonded and now we're so freed? It's so frustrating to watch us, stiff-necked people that we are. Amkshe Orif. We are a family, right? And everybody knows who has a family or who has ever been part of a family. Families are fabulous and so annoying, right? And that is, I mean, Rabbi Rietti told me that the definition of a dysfunctional family is any family with more than one member. So the Jewish people for sure have more than one member. We are a family of wondrous connections. Look at the chesed that we do for each other. It's unbelievable. Donating kidneys to each other, and giving money to each other, and opening our homes to each other, and educating each other, and driving for each other, and giving gifts. It's unbelievable the chesed that we do. We're the most delicious, warm, caring, loving people. Really, something to behold. It's so important to see how wonderful the Jews are. Mikam Chayisrael. We're gorgeously delicious, and we can be frustratingly separate. The Zohar tells us, the Kabbalistic work, the Zohar tells us, Kutshabrichu Oraisa B'Yisrael Chadhu. Hashem, the Jewish people, and the Torah are all one. That means a lot of things in a lot of different levels. It for sure means that all three are one, and it means that each one is its own singularity as well. And that there's a similarity between them because they're all eternal. The Jewish people are eternal and cannot be destroyed. Hashem promised us that by the bris ben basarim, that it was impossible we would not be wiped out. We are eternal. An individual's life is not guaranteed, but the Jewish people's life, we're eternal. There's no way to wipe out the Jewish people. As you see, a lot of people have tried with a lot of might and fury, and even Corona, and there's no way to wipe us out. Hashem promised that we will last. So here we are as a lasting people, and we are one. We're one among us too. What does that mean? That's the root of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelaza. Every Jew is mixed in one with another. And yet we don't fully feel it, but we do fully feel it. Because don't we feel the pain when other Jews behave in ways that are not pretty? We feel it in our kishkas, which means we're part of them. So we have the oneness, even though we don't feel the unity of us. We're still working on that. And that is a symptom of our gullus. That distance between where we are right now and what our actual goals and values are, that distance is gullus. And we're in gullus. So we have to work towards bringing that unification. No question about it. And it's very painful to see the lack of it. But it's so nice that we got to taste a piece of it. Okay, that's just a roadmap, just a way to think about some of these different ideas and to raise some questions. And Yirtzeh Hashem, we will post some sources that you could go into further. But now I want to switch into practical tools to handle some of this. So practical tool number one, learn. Learn more. It is important to actually explore some of these concepts. What is Mashiach? Mashiach isn't here just to bring you an ice cream cone, right? To swoop in and make life pretty for you. That's not what Mashiach is. So if you're expecting that, it's better to learn more so you can actually hope for what Mashiach really is, and then delight in watching it actually be matzmiach today, unfolding right before our very eyes. It's very exciting and very soothing. And the more you learn it, the more you can see it, and the more soothing it is, and the more exciting it is to see that we're part of this process. So that's practical tool number one. But now let's talk about let's talk about where all these questions leave us first, because I did have a thought about it. Where do they leave us? All the stuff that I just shared leaves us clearly confused, right? Confused for sure, except clearly confused. The clarity is knowing that Hashem knows what's going on, even if we don't. So we could at least have that clarity and then give our confusion back to Hashem. Yes, we can learn stuff, but we can give our confusion back to Hashem too. And I even give some of the trauma back to Hashem. So I lost a son. He did not die from corona, but while I was going through that sorrow, so one of the motions that I did to release the trauma was I imagined like I had a dove in my hands, which was my son's neshama. And I just needed to release him, throw him back up to Hashem. And I did this often like that, just like release, like throw that bird like that, let that neshama fly back to Hashem and just take whatever I'm holding and release. Like it needs to go back to Hashem. I can't hold this. This is Hashem needs to hold this because Hashem's big enough to hold it and I'm not. And it's okay because Hashem can. So throwing it back up. So actually taking a breath and then throw whatever the trauma is back up to Hashem and say, Hashem, this is for you. And I need help carrying this, but I'm going to throw this back. And you can do that as many times as you need to physically. Take that breath and throw it back to Hashem. And actually give it back. But then for me, after the initial throwing it back, there's a settling back, relaxing into Hashem's hands. So, and that's a weird thing to say, relaxing into Hashem's hands, except for that's what we see in Adon Olam, where it says at the end of Adon Olam, Biyado afkid ruchi, in his hands I place my soul. So in his hands. And sometimes I just have that image. I could just relax back. It's not my job to run the show. It's his job to run the show. And I can relax back into Hashem's hands. Biyado afkid ruchi, I put my soul into Hashem's hands. B'yet ishan v'yayira, when I'm awake and when I'm asleep, whether I'm cognizant or not cognizant. V'im rochi gaviyati, and not just my soul, my body too. I put that in Hashem's hands, and therefore, ado Hashem li v'lo ira. Hashem is with me. I don't have to be scared of anything, because I know that even if my life ends, my neshama doesn't. I can't die. Only my body can. There's nothing I need to be scared of if I'm connected to Hashem. It's interesting to think about that Eitz Chaim. There's two ways to get life, and one was prevented from us. In Gan Eden, when we made our big mistake, so Hashem said, you made this mistake, out the garden you go before you even touch the tree of life. I don't want you becoming eternal now that I introduced death onto the planet. And he kicked us out. But he said, but actually I do want you to be eternal. So I'm going to give you a different tree of life. It's Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba. Here's the Torah. All you have to do is hold on to it and you'll live forever, an eternal people. So I know I can't die. There could be an unpleasant physical reality, but I'm safe from death. So okay, one more thing, and I want to give you that. So that's a phrase you could say to yourself, Ado Hashem li v'lo ira. And one more phrase to help is the Shema. And the Shema actually anchors you into the yichud of the Jewish people, that Kol Yisrael arevim zel lezeh, we are all one, and it binds us to Hashem, who is one, and it binds us to the Torah, which helps us see that Hashem is one and behave as one. And when we say it, we can say it in two ways. And so I learned from Aryeh Kaplan from a book. I can't say I met him. I was not zeicha to that, but I read in his book about Shema that you can say Shema in two ways, and this is how I say it, in these two ways. So Shema Yisrael. Yisrael is one of those words like deer or sheep, where the singular is the same as the plural, right? Yisrael, there's one Jew, and Yisrael, that's Klal Yisrael, all the Jews, right? So you could say, Shema Yisrael, listen up, Jew. I'm talking to myself. Listen up, Jew. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, right? I'm giving myself a message. Hashem is one. Or you can call out to the whole planet. Listen up, Jews. Shema Yisrael. To all the Jews on the planet, I'm part of you all. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. You can create a yichud of all Jews together. If you want to answer that, why are we so separate? You can work on it, your very own self, through your Shema twice a day. You can help unite the Jewish people when you say Shema, as you say Shema Yisrael out to all the Jews. Because of this klal, the Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, we have the ability to access those roots. So I'll leave you with those tools. There's a few more I have on my list, but it's time to move to the question and answer for just a few minutes. And we should be zeicha to see the Gilui Yichudo on this planet very soon. All of us. Matzmiach Karen Yeshua B'mheira B'yameinu.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Aliza. What a treat it is to listen to you and to listen to the Torah that you share with all of us, and that you create the space for all of us to flourish within the words that you share with us. So thank you for that. I feel like I'm in this cocoon of peace that you were speaking about and just wrapped in Hashem's loving embrace. And I so much don't want to leave that space. And I don't think I have to. I think what we've learned here tonight, both from Sara and from you, is that we already have that. It's interesting because my son's bar mitzvah was last night, and I definitely, without realizing, was on an adrenaline high. And then when it was all over and I came home and had this feeling of exhaustion, because when the adrenaline leaves you suddenly, you've got that exhausted space. And I realized that that too is the flip side of what the amygdala does for us, to fight, flight, and freeze that Sara was sharing. And really, it is a gift from Hashem. It really is a total gift from Hashem, like what you shared about peace blossoming even through Corona. That is Hashem's way of gently moving us forward in this peace process that we are being guided towards. Okay, so I don't see that we had too many questions. Bela, are you able to unmute and let us know what they were?
Yes, we had one question, one comment actually, saying that that some people are afraid of just leaving this present world, even if they know that their Hashem is going to be eternal. So, like, if you can speak to that.
Okay. So let's think about that idea for just a minute. So it can be scary to leave this world. And that's where the tool of learning more is really helpful. It really is. I mean, there's no question that it's scary and people are scared of, I think it's important to talk about death. And if we can understand that death really is integrated into the world as a tikkun, excuse me, that's not the lechatchila situation. We should be able to stay body and soul together, and then through the work of our body, our soul perfects our body, and our body reflects that perfection that lasts forever. Excuse me, but right now we have this death necessity. But death really should be like candle lighting. Excuse me. Candle lighting when we transition from the working towards to the dwelling in of Shabbos. Really, death, it should be so smooth like candle lighting. It's not a death and separation that's necessary, but it's just a transition from this world of working towards to Olam Haba, which is the dwelling in. Aretz, working towards. Arutz, I'm running, I'm doing, I'm accomplishing. To Shamayim, Shamness, where you're just in that space. So the more you can learn, the more you could relax into, I'm actually going home. I'm going where I should be. There's actually a beautiful image that Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan talks about death when he is explaining death to a young child that might be helpful for us. But unfortunately, there was a young child in the hospital who was dying, and he was scared. And talking to his parents, like, what is it going to feel like? And I don't know if he just wrote the scenario or if he actually is reporting on what the mother said. But she said to the child, to her son, you know how sometimes you fall asleep in our bed, and then after you're asleep, Tati picks you up and carries you to your bed, and you wake up in your own bed? I said, yeah. I said, well, that's what's going to happen. You're just going to fall asleep in your bed, and Hashem is your Tati, Shabbat, and he's going to pick you up and carry you to right where you need to be, and you'll wake up at home. So it's a beautiful image to think about. It's still sad. Nobody wants to lose somebody, and nobody themselves wants to die. And yet, if you really know that you're going home, that this is temporary, this world is just a prose door to the next world, where actually it's like Shabbos. There is that taste of whatever you worked towards in this world, you get to live in the next world. That's why Shabbos is a taste of the next world. It's, you get to practice living in that which you created. So there's really nothing to be scared of. It's something to actually look forward to, except not for a long time. So it is something that we have to work on. And if we talk about it, we can release the fear of death. Again, we're not looking forward to it that we want to bring it on. We love life because we want to prepare as much as we can, create that beautiful space that we'll be living in forever, that beautiful relationship that we'll be living in forever. But in the end, it's where Hashem wants us to be. But it's hard to let go and be there. So it's totally okay to live in both. I both don't want it, and I know it's okay. I both fear it, and I know that Hashem runs the world and he's only doing what's good. I both would rather hang on, and I know that eventually everyone has to let go. It's okay to be in that both and for now. And it just pays to learn more, to be able to relax a little bit, to know that in the end, it really is the place that we belong. It's not death, it's life. It's just the body that we're wearing. We don't wear anymore. Do you have a follow-up question about that, Bela? Or a comment?
No, we just got another question. And what do we do when the pandemic had such an horrendous effect on us that we are blocked from feeling love from Hashem and we just feel abandoned?
So that's a great question. And I think that's a question that Jews have faced, everyone has faced throughout history. And I think that we can look at our relationship with Hashem like a marriage, or like a best friend if somebody's not married, like a long-term relationship where it goes through phases. I think about those types of relationships. I once read a book on the seasons of marriage, and I love that metaphor of a winter, spring, summer, fall. Spring being the beginning of a relationship where it's so exciting and you see the potential and it's just everything is like blossoming and hopeful. And then the summer where it's warm and delicious and in full bloom, and even though there might be a bee here and there that you have to be careful for, but everything's just lovely, a fully blossomed marriage. And then the cold winds start to blow and the leaves start to fall, and it's still kind of pretty, and the blossoms are still there, but they start to fade in their color. And all of a sudden, the leaves are bare and the flowers are gone, and it's cold winds blowing, and you're in winter. And winter is a very hard place to be in a relationship, whether that's with a friend or a spouse or a parent. We've all experienced winters in relationships, and spring isn't always ahead, but it's something to look toward. It's not that relationships are cyclical like that necessarily, but there are different seasons, and so are they with Hashem. We can be in a winter with Hashem where you do feel abandoned and alone. And the trick is to say, this doesn't have to last. I think what can make it work is if you look at the long history of the Jewish people and really feel the connection to a long history. There have been some very hard times, and yet here you are, a walking, talking miracle. If you can really tap into the fact that for 3,300, I think, and 32.5 years since Matan Torah, since Har Sinai, your family, anyone who's listening right now, your family survived that entire time. Your direct ancestor wasn't killed before they got to procreate, or you wouldn't be here. So you come from a long line of successful survival from Sinai till today, but also from a long line of spiritual engagement, because a lot of Jews chose out and not your family. That's why you're here, because at every twist and turn, your family made a choice, even if it was a light choice, even if they stepped to the side. But if they still identified as Jewish, they made a choice that allowed you to sit here today identifying as a Jew alive. If you could tap into that long history, you could realize maybe you're in winter and it's time to aim for spring, or at least aim for fall, right? Try to get back to a place where you feel a little bit more connected, and then aim for spring, some hope, and hopefully you'll be brought back into summer. But to know that it is possible to go from winter to spring, as we're about to see. It's not a permanent state. It's a place we have to reach forward towards.
Okay, thank you, Aliza. So I think that's it for tonight. That's all we have time for anyway. And we have created a list of books and articles for you to read if any one of you are curious to learn more. And we will post that along with the video when we upload it on YouTube. Be'ezras Hashem. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Sara. Thank you, Aliza. This has been an actual treat. And Bela, this has been a beautiful opportunity to begin something. And Be'ezras Hashem will continue with step 2.
Be'ezras Hashem.
Be'ezras Hashem. Thank you.
Thank you, Bela. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody.